We were first graced with the glorious excerpts from Tom Bower's much-anticipated book Betrayal, and you know, or at least a normal person would know, that when you're being exposed by the industry's most foremost publications, there might be some truth.
Prince Harry and Meghan have hit back at controversial biographer Tom Bower over his new book, which says Prince Harry was brainwashed by his wife.
And that's the irony here. Once again, Harry and Meghan, Duke and Duchess of Self-Sabotage, strike again. Usually when a controversial book drops, the strategy is simple.
Well, listen, Tom Bower is one of the most feared biographers in the world because, like you, Paul, he's an elite-level journalist who checks his facts. And don't forget that these publishing companies are not stupid.
I just thought this woman is really doing something quite dreadful to Britain, and Harry has fallen in love with her in a ludicrous way and has gone along as her accomplice.
It turns into something quite destructive, not just for everyone else, but for the so-called ambitious person as well. And Tom Bower gives us a few notable examples in this excerpt.
Swirling rumours from inside the book drop straight into the spotlight, and they hit hard right from the start. The opening claims point to 25 major revelations, with the biggest shock centred on a private remark, allegedly linked to Queen Camilla, suggesting Meghan had completely taken control of Harry's mindset. Inside palace whispers, things allegedly weren't calm at all. They were tense and heavy, like something shifting behind closed doors. People close to the environment reportedly felt Harry wasn't making his own calls anymore, like his voice had faded into the background of his own life. The belief spreading inside those circles was that Meghan was the one steering everything, shaping decisions and directing the path forward in a way that left no room for outside influence. Harry, once known for his humor and relaxed charm.
New book by royal biographer Tom Bower. And this may have been the worst possible move from a PR perspective that they could have made. Because by responding publicly, Harry and Meghan have done exactly what every author hopes for.
But the problem with the Sussex is they want to control their own narrative. They don't like people writing about them without their permission.
The kind of royal people felt they could connect with easily is described in a very different light now. Instead of that easygoing energy, he's portrayed as someone more distant, more frustrated, and carrying a heavier emotional load that people around him can't ignore anymore. The shift is so strong that even observers question how things change so fast and so deeply. Looking at that transformation, some voices inside the story throw out a sharp question, almost challenging the situation head-on. Was Queen Camilla actually wrong in what she allegedly said? Or was she seeing something others refused to acknowledge? The book then jumps into another explosive moment involving Meghan and a major speaking event at the One Young World Summit, a stage meant for global inspiration and leadership energy. The setting was supposed to highlight young voices and worldwide change, filled with purpose and ambition. But according to the claims, the moment didn't unfold that way at all. Instead of sticking to the broader mission of the event, Meghan's speech allegedly shifted heavily toward her own personal journey, her experiences, and her rise into public life. The focus reportedly stayed locked on herself, repeating her personal perspective again and again in a way that stood out to many listeners. In fact, critics highlight that the word "I" appeared repeatedly throughout the speech, almost dominating the tone and direction of the message. People watching expected global inspiration.
What I really like about this particular excerpt, and what I'm going to be personally focusing on, is this major theme in Meghan's life, which is her ability to keep going, to keep pushing forth.
But what they allegedly got instead felt more like a personal spotlight moment stretched far beyond expectations. When the script was reviewed ahead of time by Ella Robertson, daughter of the event's co-founder, her reaction was described as extremely short and blunt, with the phrase "she's it" being repeated in conversation. The reaction wasn't positive, and it added to the growing tension around how the speech would land with the audience. What was meant to be a shared global platform reportedly turned into something far more centered on one narrative, leaving attendees surprised at the direction it took and questioning the shift in tone during such an important summit. Then the story shifts again into a private royal meeting that allegedly took place after Harry and Meghan returned from their honeymoon in 2018. A quiet tea gathering brought together Harry, Meghan, William and Kate in what was expected to be a relaxed family moment. But according to the claims, the atmosphere changed quickly and unexpectedly. Meghan allegedly directed sharp words toward Prince William during the conversation, instantly shifting the mood in the room from calm to tense in seconds. Harry, instead of stepping in or reacting, is described as staying silent, watching the situation unfold without interruption. That silence becomes one of the most talked about points in the story, painting a picture of growing distance and hesitation within the group dynamic. William had already reportedly expressed concerns before the marriage, warning Harry to slow things down and think carefully. But those warnings were not taken into account at the time. After the tea meeting incident, the emotional gap between the brothers.
So he's a fearsome figure. His book is called Betrayal. It contains some really juicy allegations, including claims that Queen Camilla, King Charles's wife, confided to a friend, Harry's been brainwashed by Meghan. Who could disagree? Since they got married, he suddenly hates his country, hates his family, hates being a royal, and goes off for a very boring life in California. This is not a marriage, Paul. This is a hostage situation.
Is said to have widened even further. From that moment forward, the bond between them reportedly began to fracture in a way that couldn't easily be repaired, turning a single family interaction into a long-term breaking point that changed relationships inside the royal circle. The narrative then takes a sharper turn, suggesting Meghan never truly aimed for traditional royal life at all. Instead, she is portrayed in the book as someone with a much bigger vision, focused on influence, media presence, fashion reach, and global recognition. In this version of events, royal life wasn't the destination. It was just the platform. Harry's name and position allegedly became part of a much larger strategy to build visibility and power on an international scale. But critics inside the story argue that things didn't go as planned. Instead of smooth global success, the public image became tangled in controversy, media tension, and constant scrutiny that turned the entire situation into something far more chaotic than polished. Harry is then described as being caught in the middle of two worlds, no longer fully connected to the royal institution he was born into, and not fully integrated into the new life forming around him. That in-between space leaves him isolated, unsure, and emotionally stuck. Another major concern raised in the book revolves around Harry's long-term future within the royal structure. There's fear described.
The Queen Camilla said that Harry had been brainwashed by Meghan, and that in fact members of the royal family felt that Meghan kind of changed Harry's personality, and he went from a fun-loving guy that we all loved, that we all liked, to this rather furrow-browed guy who seemed to hate everybody and everything.
Allegations of a row between Meghan and William, with Meghan back in the day when she was in the royal family. She had a fight with William reportedly, and she said, "William, get your finger out of my face." It seems like William had the measure of this woman long before the rest of us.
That when William eventually becomes king, titles could be reviewed or removed, potentially affecting Harry's status entirely. That idea alone adds pressure to the already strained situation, raising the possibility of a complete break from royal identity and leaving behind a life once defined by duty, privilege, and tradition. The story then escalates into claims about strategy and media timing. Meghan's team is described as closely tracking royal schedules, public appearances, and major events in order to position announcements for maximum attention. One example highlights Princess Catherine's scheduled appearance at a major royal event, which allegedly triggered an immediate response in timing decisions from Meghan's side. The coordination is portrayed as deliberate and highly calculated. On the same day as Catherine's high-profile appearance, a major trailer release reportedly dropped, instantly drawing attention across media platforms. Critics in the book interpret this as a competitive move designed to redirect public focus at a critical moment. Supporters of the narrative argue it wasn't coincidence at all, but a strategic attempt to dominate the media cycle and shift attention in real time. However, the counter-argument inside the story paints a different picture entirely. It suggests these moves weren't signs of strength, but signs of pressure, implying that attention was slipping and efforts were becoming more aggressive in response. Harry's situation is then described in emotional terms, with claims that he feels abandoned by the institution he once served. Security concerns, lack of support, and a sudden shift in protection are all highlighted as major emotional triggers. On the other side, critics argue it was all a result of stepping away from official duties, meaning reduced protection was part of the consequences of that decision rather than an unexpected withdrawal. The disagreement between both sides remains unresolved, continuing to fuel tension and public debate. The final stretch of the narrative circles back to early warnings from within the royal circle, suggesting that concerns about Meghan's intentions appeared very early in the relationship. Observers allegedly felt she was targeting not just Harry, but also the vulnerabilities shaped by his past experiences. These interpretations suggest emotional pressure points were already known and possibly used as leverage in shaping the relationship dynamic. Harry, according to the book's framing, didn't fully recognize the situation unfolding around him at the time. As tensions increased, Meghan is described as becoming more outspoken and less aligned with traditional royal expectations, creating friction instead of harmony within the institution. Behind major public events, additional claims suggest strict control over media access, photography, and crowd positioning. Journalists were reportedly restricted, crowds managed tightly, and only selected media figures were allowed close access. This level of control is portrayed by critics as highly unusual for public royal adjacent appearances, raising questions about image management and narrative control. Finally, financial pressure begins to enter the picture. After major media deals reportedly weakened, income streams are described as shrinking, while expenses remain extremely high, especially security costs reaching millions annually. The imbalance between rising expenses and declining media opportunities is presented as a growing concern, leaving the situation increasingly unstable and financially strained. Money pressure hits the story like a sudden drop, and things inside the Archewell Foundation allegedly start falling apart fast in a way nobody could ignore anymore. Reports in the book claim the foundation's income took a serious dive, sliding from around $5.3 million down to just $2.1 million, and that shift changed everything really quickly. At the same time, expenses weren't slowing down at all. They were actually piling up even heavier. The numbers being thrown around show spending at about $3.9 million, while donations only reached around $1.2 million, creating a gap that looked impossible to ignore. Critics in the story describe this as more than just a rough patch, calling it a structure that looked unstable from the inside out. Instead of things improving, the foundation allegedly started handing off responsibilities to another group called Parents Together. That move was presented publicly as smooth and strategic, but critics in the narrative saw it very differently, describing it as stepping away from commitments they once stood firmly behind. The contrast between the public message and the criticism created even more tension around the situation. Then the story takes a sharp turn into Meghan's lifestyle branding moves, and things get even more controversial fast. Her brand, as ever, reportedly launched a raspberry fruit spread that immediately caught attention for all the wrong reasons. It wasn't even called jam, it was labeled fruit spread, and that detail became a major talking point everywhere. According to the claims, the reason for that wording was simple but awkward. The mixture was allegedly too runny to legally qualify as jam, forcing a rebrand that critics instantly picked apart. Instead of being seen as a luxury product launch, it became a viral moment of confusion and jokes online. Still, the price tag didn't reflect any hesitation at all. The product was reportedly sold at around $12, and that alone sparked backlash because people couldn't understand how something so simple was positioned as high-end luxury. Critics didn't hold back, calling it overpriced and questioning the whole branding strategy behind it. To make things look more personal and warm, Meghan's team allegedly promoted the idea that she made the spread herself in her own kitchen with her children nearby, creating a cozy family image meant to connect with audiences emotionally. But skeptics questioned whether this storytelling matched reality or was just carefully crafted branding for attention. Then the scene shifts straight into one of the most talked about fashion moments in the entire narrative, Paris Fashion Week. This is normally where elite names in fashion gather, where invitations are rare and status matters more than anything else. But according to the book's claims, Meghan didn't actually receive a formal invitation. Instead, she allegedly reached out directly to designer Pierpaolo Piccioli herself, which already surprised many people in the industry. The approach reportedly wasn't just about attending, it came with conditions attached. She was said to have proposed a surprise appearance at the show, but only if the brand covered all related costs, which allegedly reached around $250,000. That detail alone sparked huge reactions because it flipped the usual fashion world dynamic upside down. What made the situation explode even further was that Pierpaolo Piccioli himself later addressed it publicly, confirming that Meghan had not been invited in the traditional sense. That confirmation turned the story into a viral talking point instantly. Inside the narrative, critics framed the whole situation as highly uncomfortable, suggesting it looked less like a glamorous invitation and more like someone trying to negotiate their way into an exclusive space under unusual terms. The perception spread fast and stuck hard in public discussion. The story then shifts again into Harry's Invictus Games, one of his most meaningful projects created to support injured veterans through sport and competition. The event is widely respected and has received strong support, including appearances from major public figures. Even Queen Elizabeth herself attended in earlier years, showing how important the initiative was considered. But according to the EEAM, Books claims, attention around the event slowly started shifting in a very different direction over time. Instead of headlines focusing on veterans and their achievements, critics say media coverage began focusing heavily on Meghan's presence, outfits, and appearances. This shift created frustration among some observers who felt the original purpose was being overshadowed. In fact, some people allegedly started calling it the Meghan Games, a nickname used to highlight how much attention was moving away from the participants and towards celebrity coverage. That label alone became part of the wider debate surrounding media focus and public perception. The book then pushes into a harsh media reality check moment, asking a simple question about recognition at the Invictus Games. How many people can actually name the top winning teams or medal leaders from recent events? Most people reportedly can't, and that point is used to emphasize how quickly attention fades from the athletes themselves. From there, Meghan's image strategy reportedly shifts again into a major rebranding attempt through a high-profile feature with Harper's Bazaar. The goal was clear: present a polished, powerful version of herself, ready for a new chapter on the global stage. But the moment inside the interview setup allegedly turned awkward in an unexpected way. When the journalist arrived, a formal announcement was made by a butler declaring, "Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex," in a very dramatic tone. The problem was simple but striking. The announcement reportedly happened in an empty room. No audience, no guests, no journalist present yet. Just a ceremonial-style introduction delivered to silence. That contrast became one of the most discussed symbolic moments in the narrative. Then things escalate again during a public appearance in New York, where cameras captured Harry and Meghan looking visibly drained and tense. At one moment, they appeared to be in a disagreement, and Meghan was seen pushing Harry's hand away during the exchange. While relationship tensions are normal in any couple, the book highlights how every small gesture becomes magnified under global scrutiny. With constant media attention, even minor moments explode into international headlines within minutes. That moment sparked widespread discussion, with people asking whether everything behind closed doors was truly as stable as it appeared in public. The pressure of constant visibility becomes part of the bigger narrative surrounding their relationship. The focus then shifts heavily into Harry's security dispute in the UK, where he expressed frustration over being denied armed police protection during visits. He described feeling vulnerable and exposed while traveling without official security support. However, the book introduces a contrasting detail that changes the tone of that complaint. It claims Harry had access to a private rail carriage reserved exclusively for him during travel between London and Manchester, isolating him completely from public exposure. This detail fuels criticism that his situation may not have been as unprotected as described, adding another layer of controversy around how security concerns were presented versus how arrangements actually looked on the ground. Despite that, Harry continued expressing concerns about safety in the UK, even while still choosing to visit, which critics pointed out as contradictory and confusing. That contradiction became part of the wider public debate around his statements. The narrative then moves into Harry's charitable donation of around £1.1 million, which he publicly announced. In royal tradition, charitable giving is usually done quietly without publicity, making his announcement stand out immediately. Observers in the book interpreted this move very differently, suggesting it looked less like simple generosity and more like reputation management. Critics labeled it as an attempt to repair public image through high-profile giving rather than quiet action. Even with that effort, the criticism in the story suggests it didn't fully change public perception or calm ongoing debate around his reputation. Finally, Harry reunites with King Charles after nearly 2 years of no real contact, a moment many expected to be emotional and deeply personal. People imagined warmth, reconciliation, and a powerful father-son reunion after a long separation. But according to the book's account, what actually happened was far more restrained and formal. The meeting reportedly lasted only 54 minutes, with no visible emotional breakthrough or public display of affection. Instead of a dramatic reunion, it is described as distant and structured, almost like a formal appointment rather than a heartfelt family moment. That short duration shocked many observers, given the long gap between their interactions. Meanwhile, Meghan's media presence also faces setbacks, with her lifestyle show reportedly ranking very low on Netflix, far down the platform's overall list. The performance led to cancellation decisions, marking a major professional setback in her media career. As opportunities shrink, she begins appearing at more public events again, including charity functions where her presence draws heavy attention. One appearance in New York featured her wearing expensive jewelry valued at hundreds of thousands of dollars, which immediately sparked criticism. Observers argued the contrast between luxury presentation and charity settings created a strong public reaction, fueling debate about image, intention, and timing in highly visible environments. The tension in the story spikes again as the narrative shifts into a harsh spotlight on image, luxury, and public perception. And it all hits with zero subtlety from the very first line. The woman, who was once described as stepping away from certain high-profile events, is now portrayed as circling back into them aggressively, trying to stay visible in a world that moves fast and forgets even faster. Critics inside the book frame this moment as a desperate push for relevance, where every appearance becomes part of a bigger fight for attention that never really stops. The $325,000 worth of jewelry worn on her wrist becomes the centerpiece of that argument, flashing under lights and cameras in a way that instantly fuels conversation across media platforms. To some observers, that one detail alone tells a full story without needing extra explanation. It becomes a symbol of contrast, timing, and presentation all at once, and it adds fuel to an already heated public debate. Then, the narrative jumps straight into one of the most repeated contradictions in the entire discussion: the Paris Fashion Week hotel situation, which critics say perfectly exposes the gap between image and reality. On one side of the story, there's the carefully crafted public persona tied to a simple lifestyle brand, complete with cozy kitchen imagery, homemade storytelling, and a relatable everyday tone. On the other side, there's the high-end reality of elite fashion events, luxury environments, and extreme exclusivity that most people can barely imagine stepping into. During Paris Fashion Week, Meghan was reportedly staying in a hotel suite priced at around $22,000 per night, a figure that immediately sparked disbelief and criticism the moment it was mentioned. That number alone became a headline point because it stood in complete contrast to the down-to-earth image being discussed elsewhere in the narrative. Critics had a field day with that comparison, arguing that it becomes almost impossible to present yourself as a simple kitchen-focused creator while simultaneously living inside ultra-luxury surroundings that exist far outside everyday reality. The clash between those two worlds becomes one of the central tensions of the entire story, and it keeps resurfacing in different forms as the narrative continues. Then, the focus moves into jewelry tied to Princess Diana, which adds another emotional and controversial layer to the discussion. According to the narrative, Meghan has repeatedly worn pieces associated with Diana at major public events, and every single appearance triggers instant media reaction, headlines, and widespread online debate. The most discussed detail is the blue gemstone ring, first seen during Meghan's wedding reception in 2018, which later reappears in other public moments and instantly reignites attention each time. Critics argue that over time, these accessories stop being seen as purely personal or sentimental, and instead become interpreted as strategic visual choices that keep public interest alive and conversations ongoing. In the book's framing, this becomes part of a larger argument about visibility, where even small details can turn into major headlines when other projects or media attention start fading. The discussion becomes sharper when critics suggest that referencing Diana's legacy in this way carries a deeper media impact, whether intentional or not, because it connects instantly with global emotion and memory. But supporters of a more neutral view would argue that jewelry often carries personal meaning, family connection, and emotional significance that cannot be reduced to publicity alone. That clash of interpretation keeps the debate active and unresolved. Then the story escalates again into claims surrounding the 2025 Invictus Games in Vancouver, where expectations, behavior, and public perception allegedly collide in a very intense environment. According to the book, Meghan reportedly made a request that drew immediate attention. Everyone at the event was expected to address her as Ma'am and Harry as Sir. That detail instantly becomes one of the most controversial parts of the entire section, because it raises questions about formality, respect, and tradition in a setting built around veterans, competition, and service recognition. Critics in the narrative argue that such titles are traditionally associated with official authority or long-standing institutional roles, not informal public sporting events. That interpretation quickly turns into a wider debate about tone and expectations, especially in environments centered around injured veterans and their achievements. But the controversy doesn't stop there. The book claims that behind the scenes, organizers were dealing with increasing frustration over logistics, travel, and security arrangements connected to Harry and Meghan's presence. Private jet travel and high-level security requirements are mentioned as part of the operational pressure, adding strain to an event already managing complex international coordination. Critics argue that this creates a strong contrast between the purpose of the Invictus Games and the attention given to celebrity logistics, shifting focus away from the athletes themselves. Then, the narrative moves into attendance numbers, and the tone becomes even more uncomfortable for organizers. At one wheelchair basketball event, reports claim that only around 43 people paid to attend, a number that immediately stands out due to how low it is for an international sporting event. That figure becomes a major talking point because it raises questions about engagement, visibility, and public interest in specific parts of the competition. According to reports mentioned in the narrative, empty seats were quietly filled with additional attendees, arranged to improve the visual presentation for photos and media coverage. Critics interpret this as an attempt to preserve the appearance of a full and successful event, even when actual attendance did not match expectations on the ground. Meanwhile, the athletes, the veterans competing and representing resilience, are described as being pushed further into the background of the public narrative, overshadowed by celebrity attention and media focus. That imbalance becomes one of the strongest emotional criticisms in the entire section, highlighting a disconnect between the event's mission and its media coverage. Then the story transitions into what is described as a Sussex master plan, involving the 2026 Birmingham Invictus Games. According to the claims, Harry and Meghan are allegedly viewing the upcoming event as a major opportunity to re-establish a strong presence in the UK and reclaim media attention on a global stage. One key claim suggests that Harry is reportedly pushing for King Charles to personally open the event. If that were to happen, critics argue it would instantly create one of the biggest media moments imaginable, placing all attention directly onto the couple and the event simultaneously. But the book also makes a strong counterpoint, suggesting that the reaction could be far less positive than expected. Instead of celebration, it could trigger backlash, protests, and renewed criticism due to already divided public opinion. The narrative emphasizes that public response cannot be fully controlled, no matter how carefully events are planned or structured in advance. As the section reaches its final stretch, the tone becomes more reflective and charged, circling back to the idea that reputation, visibility, and perception are constantly shifting forces that can change direction instantly. Every appearance, every decision, and every public moment becomes part of a larger ongoing story that never fully pauses and never stops being analyzed from different perspectives. And as the book wraps up its series of so-called truth bombs, it pulls the audience directly into the discussion one last time. So now, the question is left hanging in the air. Out of everything revealed, which moment stands out the most, and which claim feels the most shocking or unbelievable? The conversation is intentionally left open-ended, keeping the debate alive across comments, reactions, and online discussions. And with that final push, the message closes by encouraging engagement. So if this video kept you watching until the very end, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more content just like this. And see you in the next one.